Hello and welcome. So what we're going to be doing today is setting up our own water altar. Now, the important thing to remember here is that this is a representation of you and your practice. And so it's really important that when you're setting this up, you're not thinking, oh, it has to look this particular way or it must have these things. I'll be going through a whole bunch of suggestions on what you might want to include on your altar and how I would choose them and why I would choose them. But I do hope that you can take this as inspiration to create your own. So let's start with the very, very first thing. So first off, what we need to do is cleanse our space. Now, what I have here is, this is sacred water from Sulis's temple in Bath. And what I'm going to do with this right now is I'm just going to do a little bit of a sprinkling. And I'm going to use this bowl here that I have. This is one of my sacred vessels. And I'm just going to pour in just a tiny bit because we don't need a lot for this. All right, so this is already sacred water. We will be going over how to create sacred water in another lesson. But for now, get the cap on there. We'll be focusing on using the water, and then you can learn how to make your own. But if you have access to a sacred source, then that's excellent. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is I'm going to take a bundle of herbs. Now this happens to be a dried bundle of mugwort. However, you can use anything that you like: rosemary, lavender, even basil from the grocery store. Though basil does have a very fiery element, you may want to pick something that is a little bit more watery and has a little bit more of a watery nature. Either way, doesn't matter. What you're going to do is, like I said, we've already created the sacred water, and I'll go into detail later on how to do this and do a blessing. So we're going to skip that particular step right now, and you'll have a separate video on that. This is just using the water that's already created to help us create our altar. So we're going to take this in here. We're just going to dip it into the bowl, and we're just going to start taking the water like a wash, and using the herbs and brushing it across. Now, if you don't have herbs, what you can do instead is take the water and put it in your hands and here. Now, if you're going to go in a circle, you want to go in a clockwise direction into the center, spiraling in. Okay, so now our water altar has been consecrated, or has been washed in blessed water. So now let us go ahead and put this sacred energy into the altar surface itself and kind of give it its purpose before we start decorating it. So what you're going to do here is you're going to take take two L's, okay? And then you're going to take them upside down and you're going to put them into a triangle like this, okay? You can do two fingers if you'd like as well. So it's this downward pointing triangle. And you're going to put this into the center of the altar, and then you're going to use your will and your intent to charge this particular space with purpose. So you can come up with fancy rhymes, and you can use incantations from just about any book or any practice. And so for now, though, because I don't want this to be too complicated, I'm just going to use some basic words to kind of give you an example of how you can do this. So I would recommend, after you have the particular symbol right here in the center of your altar, to take a few deep breaths. 3 is often associated with water, and so we'll be using the number 3 here. 3 deep breaths. Okay, now what you're going to do is you are going to say something along the lines of, I consecrate this space with sacred water. I dedicate this space to working the magic of the waters, to serving the waters, and to working my path here on this surface. I dedicate this surface and all that is on in service to the waters. So mote it be. Now what you can do, the very last thing here, is hold your triangle here at your chest. You're going to breathe in your own waters. You're going to bring your triangle up to your mouth. And you're going to use your breath pushed through the triangle. Okay, so you can do something along those lines with just about any item that you put on here if you would like. So we're not going to do that for each step, but if you really feel called to do something similar for each item, you may. I do recommend doing it every time you get a new surface. And if you are doing a temporary altar or an altar outside near the beach or near the river, then, and you're working on a rock, I suggest doing that as well. Okay, so this is a beautiful piece of fabric that I have selected for our work today. And the reason that I selected this is for a couple reasons. One, it reminds me of a time, this is a very old piece of fabric, so it reminds me of a time when I was living in Japan and dancing and working the sea priestess and sea magic there on these sacred shores where priestesses still live and work today. So part of my going away present from my dance students was this. This was wrapped in, one of the things that they had given me was wrapped in this. And so this deeply connects me to the Isle of Okinawa, to the priestesses that were there, to my connection to the sea goddess and to the ocean. So I'm going to take this and just gently put it over the top. Now I thought that this was perfect because it had this watery, greeny blue color to it, which I guess in the video you're just mostly seeing the gold, but in between is this beautiful green blue, and it has these nice little dots that remind me of drops of water. So you truly can pick whatever you would like to have as your altar cloth, okay? It's up to you. But a few tips and pieces of advice. If you choose to use candles, make sure that your candles are on a dish, because the wax will ruin your altar cloth. Also be careful with sparks and incense coals, because they tend to also, if you drop them, put holes on your altar cloth, and then it loses its sacredness. So okay, let's start then, since we're talking about candles, with the other elements. So it's really important for your water altar to have balance. And even though you're dedicated to the path of water and dedicated to the path of, or path of the water goddess, water priestess, then you still should, you still should have balance. And even though water is an element in itself, the other elements can exist and coexist with water. And we'll kind of explain that here when I put these elements on, and then we'll dive into the deep watery elements. Okay, so the first thing here is some incense, okay? So right here, this is an air element, but we're going to turn this into a watery air element. Number one, we have the cauldron here, and I work with the fair folk quite often, and so I tend to keep steel off or iron off of my altar, or at least I attempt to, so take care with the spirits that you're working with. So this one here, you can really place it anywhere that you like. For me, I probably would just place it up here in the right-hand corner, because it's a really good place to have access to, and for it to still give me lots of space around here. Now that's if I'm working on it. So I'm actually going to build the altar facing you, okay, which means that it would be here, okay? So this is the first thing. Now you're thinking, okay, besides the vessel, the cauldron that represents the feminine form and the water element, how do you make this watery? Well, that's a great question. And as soon as I can find, here we go, this. So this is a glass jar, and it is full of the resin from the myrrh tree. Now, in magic, especially within ceremonial magic and some of the Western mystery traditions, myrrh is associated with the element of water. So, of course, I'm also keeping it in this very watery vessel. So this is a watery element here. Oops, let me see to move my coals around. So this is a watery element that we're going to be adding into this air element, and this is going to help to bring balance between this. This is also information that you can use for your own rituals, especially if you wanted to do balancing rituals, or if you feel that you've been playing in the waters too long and you need to balance your other elements and energy out. Also, if you happen to resonate deeply with air and with water, this would be a really great way to work that into your practice. Okay, so now we have this air going with this delicious myrrh. Smells so good. And you can continue to consecrate this with the air. And you could say something along the lines of, I consecrate this space with the powers of air in water. And then we can go over here to our candles and our flames. All right. So this candle here is a used candle, and I'm going to go ahead and put it here in this back corner. Now, if I was facing it towards me, I would place it here because it would be in the top left. That's just my preference at the moment. My other altars that I work with do have a very good balance of the elements, and so there are actually sections within the altar that has the different elements present, and you may wish to do that as well. But this here is a candle. It was sitting on my water altar, well, one of my many water altars. This one was dedicated to Morgana, and I decided to go ahead and use this as my example. So first off, this is just a regular candle. I actually highly recommend using beeswax or soy-based candles because paraffin can be toxic and isn't great for our environment. Of course, I say that as I'm holding a paraffin candle, but this happens to be one of the last in a pack that I bought several years ago now that I have been using up. So, and I have switched over to the beeswax-based. But if you can't afford beeswax, don't worry. It's okay. It can be very expensive. Better for our environment, but it can be expensive. Just be conscious, okay? And you definitely don't want to put any wax from this into a body of water. So if you were going to be doing spell work with this candle or healing work with this candle, and then you were going to take the remnants of that, the herbs, the oils, the beeswax, like do not go and put, or sorry, paraffin, do not go put that in the ocean. You'll have a better chance of putting the beeswax in because it is natural, but I'm not going to recommend that either as well, because the point is to help our environment and to heal our environment and to be stewards of the water. And by placing things in there, even though it's an old Celtic, Roman, Gaul, Germanic practice of depositing items into the water as offerings, today it's not as practical. So I have just a regular marker here. This is just a Ecoline brush pen. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to draw a triangle, my blue triangle here, down the front. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but I feel like it's a little bit bright. So I've got this blue triangle here, and then that's one side, and then the other side I'm going to do a crescent moon and a couple drops of water. And so this is one way to turn your candles into watery elements, is by drawing with blue marker or ink on there and having your water symbols. So once that's done, you can just go ahead and light your candle, which I've got a lighter here. And there we go. And then one more step to dedicating this to water. Taking our triangle again and holding it over here, okay? and bringing it down right over the candle. Pausing here at the bottom, thinking of water, visualizing water, and release. Okay, so now we have the air and the fire elements that are corresponding with water. The earth element can be the myrrh itself that is placed in here with the air, or there are other things that you can do in order to bring that earth element in. So there are simple things like adding a quartz point. But one of my favorites is this. These are pebbles, and these pebbles are quartz based, and they were collected by me in the Atlantic Ocean on the eastern North Carolina shore. And these are a wonderful way to represent the earth element. They are earth. There's nothing that represents earth more than a rock. Maybe a tree, but trees and rocks are big earth elements and representation. So to have this rock that has been tumbled away, let me use a darker one here, that has been tumbled away at by the water, this is a wonderful representation of earth and water. And again, I have it sitting here in this scallop shell, and very often bones are considered to be an earth element, and shells are actually the outside bone of the sea creatures. It's very, very similar structure, very, very similarly comprised of the same material as bone, except it comes on the outside. And of course, there's more details to that does make it different. But as a general thought process, it does contain a lot of the same function, well, not only functions, but content as the bone does. So, okay, let's move on. So the next thing here is sand. Okay, here's another really great way to bring in your earth element. All right, so just moving some things out of the way here. All right, here is our earth element. So this here, oops, got my, that's for something coming up next. Okay, so now I have this wonderful tray of sand. And there's two ways here that you can do this. Now here is another air, earth element, air, earth, and fire element. So if you would like, actually I'm going to set this aside for a second and let's go back to this. So if you would like to bring in the other elements, but you don't want to do a candle or incense, consider a bowl of sand that has a herbal smoking or smudging stick in there. Now, I have been avoiding Palo Santo and I have been avoiding sage because they do belong to indigenous cultures. They're not part of my particular culture or use, or I do not use them in my particular culture, and they are being over-harvested, and there is a lot of concern around some of the ethical acquiring of these herbs. So I encourage you to reach into your own ancestral packet and find out what kind of herbs your great-great-great-grandmother used, and perhaps use those. Or do what the ancients did and just walk out your front door and find out what you have there. Now, it's always good, of course, to consult with herbal dictionaries or field guides in order to understand which plant that you have. This one here is cedar, and I do really like these as a lot. And this is a great way to bring in the earth element in the tree, okay? The fire element here with the flame, and another air element. And here with this, what you can do is your triangle, okay? You can also create spirals. Get a little bit more fire in here. You can also create a spiral. Okay, so you can do that this way too. Spiraling in, spiraling out, or drawing that triangle on the surface. Okay, this can also be done if you're working with others. You may want to smudge them in a triangle or in a very watery spiral going down their bodies. Okay, so let's just place this over here for now. Going back to the tray. So the tray. All right, this is a tray of sand, and I really love these because there's so many ways that you can use them. As you see here, you can use them for smudging. This one's a little bit bigger, and I did this on purpose. What I'm going to do here is just take one of these big rocks, and I'm going to now draw a spiral into the center. Okay? So this is a sacred symbol now that I can come in and do some of my healing grid work on. And perhaps I'm going to incorporate other crystals or other elements. This is something that we'll go over how to create in other lessons, but if you wanted to just start playing with your own, you may find happiness in creating these grids. Now, they can also have intent, and like I said before, we'll go over how to create those, what to create them for. The other thing that you can do is just for your daily ritual, which we'll also go over in a different video, is simply, oh, and by the way, these shake out really great. Just a gentle shake, right back to start. You can do your water alchemical triangle, okay? If you're doing perhaps work for yourself for healing, you may draw the triangle, you may bring your point into the center, and perhaps 3 similar stones for each of the quarters. So these can then become healing grids, protection grids, focal points, even vision boards in a way. You could write your daily wishes, your daily goals, or just a symbol that represents them. It's also really great for protection magic if you wanted to perhaps do some bind runes into your tray of sand here. So this is all like unlimited possibilities with the tray of sand. It's also a really nice thing to keep on your altar to work with. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take these guys off for now. And let's talk about a couple other things that we would want to put on our altar. So here we have sacred vessels. So let's take a look at 3 different sacred vessels that I have to share with you. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so you've already seen this particular sacred vessel here. This is a wonderful bowl for scrying. It was made by an artist, and it does have a sea spirit right here on the bowl edge. And so it's very nice to be able to communicate with spirits through this, and it does become one of my scrying bowls. Now, you can also see over here, I kind of have a small altar space going on with a big representation of this watery moon and a couple of crystals, another representation of the moon here, and of course our scrying bowl. This would be a really nice small scrying altar, or even a small water shrine. We'll also talk about the difference between shrines and altars. Okay, so finishing out with the bowls. So you guys have seen that one. This is another one that is one of my favorite vessels. Okay, this one has been with me for a very long time, also by another artist. I did not commission either of these 2. Actually, I didn't commission either of the 3 that I'm going to show you, but I have been known to commission bowls and sacred vessels from artists, and they really appreciate it. So this is another one, and I'm going to go ahead and put this one on the altar as our sacred vessel right here, and remove the shells for now. A shell of stones. The other one is this vessel here. This is just a simple clay vessel. It does have a spiral in the center, and then it does have a few small spirals up here. Now, this one could absolutely sit on the altar, either one of these, but this is also one that I actually will take outside with me. It's also a really great vessel for traveling altars. It's small, it's sturdy, I can wrap it and place it in my basket. Okay, so these are the 3 different vessels that I have to show you, and of course you can pick whatever you like. I do recommend avoiding plastic and resin. not only for our environment, but there's a lot more sacredness in something that has been crafted by hands than a machine. And I don't think I need to go into any deeper on why this might not be a great, why plastic wouldn't be a good idea. But just take care. I really like ceramic, but I do have glass bowls as well that are really, really beautiful. Okay, so the next thing is water. What would a water altar be without water? So we have to have water. Okay, now I've got 2 examples here. And like I said, there's going to be an entire other video on how to create these sacred waters. Okay, so in this case, I have Sulis's water from Bath. This is a permanent bottle that I keep it in, and this does sit on her altar. It's, of course, visiting today for our lesson. And I also have this one, and this one sits on Morgan Le Fay's altar, and I don't know if you can see, but it is a shell. Bring it over here. Might be a little bit easier to see, but it's a shell, okay? So this shell is full of seawater, and this seawater comes from the local ocean not too far away. So I am going to go ahead and keep this on here. Not only is this a beautiful representation of the shell, but it is reusing an old bottle that I found. And so it's better for our environment to reuse than to purchase new. And it's a very good tight seal. So it's actually held this seawater for well over a year without any contaminants or bacteria or anything growing. And so, of course, it also sits on her altar. So, of course, it has the sacred aspect. Okay, so we'll talk about waters in depth a little bit more. Okay, next thing that I want to introduce are a representation of the moon. Okay, I'm going to move this just back slightly to the center and move this here. And I mean, as you can see, like, even as I'm moving through this, I am choosing where these pieces are going to sit, and they move. And you may choose to create or recreate or reconstruct your altar every season, or on the equinoxes, or the solstices, or every full moon. It's completely up to you. But speaking of moons, here's a nice representation of the moon. The moon itself is connected deeply to the water. It is responsible for gravitational force and pull and the tides, and it helps, it is responsible for the tides. That's why we have the tides. And so this here is going to represent my moon. And in this case, I think I'm going to place it here. Okay, now, a couple other things that I wanted to bring out, and that is offering bowls. All right, this one here is it's a small offering bowl from my actual temple, and it already has offerings in it, but it's just a very small blue bowl that has bits and pieces that I have given to the particular spirit that owns this bowl. And they are votive offerings, which means that I am giving them without the intent of taking them back and leaving them. So when every year when the altars get switched out, a lot of the old offerings get either burned, buried, or deposited outside near the sacred water groves and the sacred water altar outside. So there's lots of crystals and things that can get buried and it kind of given to the water. But we'll discuss that a little bit more as well. A couple other things that I just pulled out that I thought would be nice were just, I've got a couple shells. So you may wish to put a shell on here. You may wish to, here's another one, and another one. You may wish to stack them and make them look pretty. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over slightly, and this over slightly, and this over slightly, because the last and very important piece that we are going to put on here is a mermaid. Now, you can literally choose any water deity that you want to work with, and it's a good possibility that you have already been chosen by a particular spirit to work with. You can work with water goddesses, you can work with water gods, you can work with water spirits, which are very, very vast. You can also work with ancestral water spirits, ancestral water priestesses, ancestral animals, or just the animals themselves, like a dolphin or a whale. Today, though, we're going to build this in honor of the mermaid. And so there are lots of mermaid goddesses, okay? And there are divine mermaids, divine spirits. There are spirits that are goddesses that are also described as being mermaids. And so today what we're going to do is we're just going to move these forward a little bit. And we're going to place her right here. All right, now I'm going to scoot over. And we're going to bring the rocks back. We'll just set them here. This way, now these rocks are going to be charged with not only the energy of the ocean where I collected them from, but the energy of the mermaid or the particular goddess that you're working with. So you may choose to work with Aphrodite. You may choose to work with Yamaya or Sulis or Melusina or any other water spirit that's out there. I chose the mermaid today because this is a sacred piece that does sit in my temple room, and it represents not only the mermaid, but the divine feminine and a particular spirit. And so you can dedicate these particular statues or altars or items to the particular spirit, water spirit that you may be working with. And some of those include other types of water spirits would include your lake ladies, your oceanids, or your naiads, or your water nymphs, or your well maidens. It can go on and on. Okay, there we go. So this is a water altar. It's all set up now. The last thing that I would do is, now that I have all of this, I would actually stand in front of the altar to do this, but since I'm back here, I'm not going to. And I would take, coming back here to this bowl, a little bit more of the sacred water from Sulis, and I pour it in here. And then I would take my bundle of herbs yet again, and in this case, I would say something along the lines of, I bless this altar with water's wisdom and grace. May all that come here be blessed in this place. I bless this altar and all that is here, where I may shed devotional love and tears. One more time. So I may say something along the lines of, I bless all that is here with sacred waters. Okay, so now that we're finished with that, I just left my sprig of herbs in there, and we can come over here and say something along the lines of, I bless this space and all that is here with love, beauty, and peace. May the waters bless this space. May the waters find sacredness and holiness in this space. May all that come here and all that I do flow forth from me and out to you. So mote it be. Now, the important thing here is you do not have to have rhyming words. You do not even have to have words that sound great. They just need to be words that have intent and that you are very, very comfortable saying and expressing. That's the important part. Okay, well, I hope that you have found this particular section to be informative and that it's going to inspire you in your own practice. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you for the next lesson. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.